right. Good afternoon, Kirk. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right, Sheldon. And how about yourself? Have you recovered from that massive flood you had a few days ago?
Yeah, I guess Steinbach's asking for flood relief funds. So
I
there's
don't blame
lots
them.
of people that don't have insurance here, I guess, or the maximum amount of insurance you can get for a flood like that here is 10 grand. Well,
Oh,
yeah, that barely covers carpet. So
yeah,
we
for
only really
sure.
had some baseboards that we need to replace. But yeah, a friend of mine, like they had 2 inches in their basement.
Yeah. Oh, no, I know that when I lived in Winnipeg, I was very nervous about my sump pump. My sump pump
Sump pump.
became a very important appliance at our house.
Yeah,
And
I'm
I would
actually
just
going to be
fire it
buying
up.
a extra one and some
Yeah.
extra cable or extra hoses just to run out a window if we need to, because
Yeah. Oh,
that
yeah.
1/3 horsepower pump just doesn't do it when you've got like 8-inch pipes going into that basin, like four of them, and then you got a 1 1/4 inch going out. It's like, nah, it's
Yeah.
just the math lines up here.
Yeah, no, not very enjoyable. You can get a bit sweaty under the armpits when you see the water coming in exceeds the
Mhm.
water going out.
And it was one of those things where it's like, I looked at it because our neighbor, their sump pump failed totally. So,
Oh no.
um, but I went down when we heard theirs failed. I thought like ours was working fine. Like it was like inch and a quarter of water coming out of that pump, out of
Yeah.
that pipe constantly. And then, yeah, it was just went down, checked it out, didn't open up the basin. Like it's under our floor, so I didn't pop open the hatch. And then my daughter comes up like a minute later. Yeah, it's leaking now.
Nice. Those are words I just don't enjoy hearing when it's my house.
No.
We were on vacation once and we got a call and said, hey, there's water coming through your basement ceiling and the drywall is falling off. What's going on? I don't know what's going on. I'm like 5 hours away. It turned out our washing machine, something had broken inside it, so it was just pumping water straight into the machine and out on to the floor, on the main floor. And then,
Floods are bad. I don't like them.
yeah, could be worse things though.
There and like it says, be thankful in all things. So it's like
Uh,
okay. And then I was thinking, okay, should I be thankful I'm not like that guy who had it way worse than me, who's in my
yeah, that
cell
didn't seem
group?
right.
Like I don't think that's very
That didn't
nice.
seem right. I
So
think a
thankful
lot of
nobody
times,
died.
yeah, I don't know. I think a lot of times I look at this life as kind of like refining and training and honing, and I find that the people who've gone through a lot of suffering tend to have a lot more depth to them, more wisdom, more things to listen to when they're talking.
Mhm.
And so I suspect maybe a lot of it is just to sharpen us up, to make us wiser, to maybe reset our perspectives, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and perspectives on this was like, okay, there were people driving through it. Like I drove through some of this just to get home. I didn't think it was going to be bad, and by the time I realized that I was already in it. But we made it home. Car was fine. The truck was fine,
Good.
and we had to deliver some neighbors to where they needed to go. But but through the whole thing, I'm thinking of when I was in Thailand, in Bangkok in 2011, right after they had their massive flooding, and they had like a story high. So we were boating through the neighborhood,
Yeah.
delivering water to people that were. I remember this one lady, super big smile on her face. The Thai people are always smiling, and she had a cooler with her baby in it. So the cooler could float, and so she was taking her kids through the street. It was up to her neck,
Yeah.
and then we found out there were like 8 green mamba snakes on the loose the next day.
Yeah. I guess they would be rambling around given the flood.
Yeah, yeah, and there were gators or crocodiles there in the water, and people are just walking through it. Nothing you
Yeah.
can do.
Well, yeah, it sounds like what you experienced wasn't as bad as that.
No, no, we were okay. Uh, All right. Well, so last week, Donald Trump posted a tweet on X. I posted an X on X? Posted a post on X? I don't know what the wording is now. Thanks, Elon. He posted he posted on X saying, "I hate Taylor Swift." So she had endorsed Kamala, and no shock there. But he comes out, "I hate Taylor Swift." Now it's Donald Trump, so you don't actually know what he actually means when he's saying anything. But before that tweet came out, you had on the list of subjects we might cover this fall defining hate, and is there a change to what the word hate means now?
Yeah.
I just found it really interesting that that just happened. So why don't we get into that? So let's go into what is the definition of hate, or maybe we'll start with what was the definition of hate.
Yeah. Well, it seems that when I was younger, and throughout the centuries, there's this idea that hate was hate was defined as a severe or a significant loathing for another person, a real detesting of another person. Or it could be, when I grew up, you would say, some people would say, I hate liver and onions. And they would actually throw up at the thought of if they had to eat something like that. I like it, but that's me. So hate, even back as far time as first century in the New Testament, hate had sort of two different nuances. The first was the loathing, detesting, severe dislike for another person. And the other one was, it was actually a preference for something else in relation to the thing that you're saying you're hating. It didn't mean that you loathe it or you detest it. It's just that there is something else that you prefer, that you will give priority to or precedent to. So you see, even then, was kind of two major ideas on the word hate. Same Greek word, mind you. It was just different approaches. So that's kind of the way it's been used. And when you used it for people, I think people instinctively realize they're using the loathing, detesting before they would use that word for people. And they would use it in a lot more looser way when they used it for food or for particular music and that sort of thing. But now I think it's when they're talking of people, well, something has changed. Bottom line, what do you think, Sheldon? Have you noticed any change in this area?
Well, as the world gets more partisan and extreme, I think, like, I hate the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. I'm a Saskatchewan Roughrider fan, so
What?
I hate the Winnipeg Blue Bombers.
That's
But I
sad.
don't want them dead.
No.
I just want them to lose badly. I don't even want them to get hurt. I just want them in pain and they have to leave the game. That's all.
Oh, okay.
So you have this, like, there's a I don't like this team. Is there a rival? Is rivalry now becoming is rivalry between political parties or different belief structures becoming something that it's almost one of those you need to go to war over?
Yeah. Does it legitimize hate, the rivalry? Now, I've been to the UK and I've been to a couple of soccer games there, or football games, and I would have to say that it's not just rivalry there. The level of animosity a fan can have against a fan of the other team. For example, I was at both games I was at. There were police separating, just a solid row of police separating the fan section for, say, Manchester and the fan section for Liverpool. Solid row of police. And you had to watch yourself. I wore a Liverpool jersey there at the time, and I realized I've probably just burned bridges with a lot of football fans in saying that. But I was in Liverpool. I'm going to the game. when in Liverpool you do as the people do there.
It's
Same
safer.
with the.
It's
Oh,
safer
it
to do
definitely
that.
was safer. In fact, I was not even going to wear anything, and my friend who lived in Liverpool said, "Oh, there's no way you can go to this game without a Liverpool something, a scarf, a hat, jersey. It's just a matter of safety." And so
Because
there,
neutral means you're not for
oh,
Liverpool.
you are, you're fair game for both sides, I guess, if you're neutral. So, but yeah, it's been a phenomenon that I've been watching over the last number of years, especially in the U.S., in the polarization of politics, in the polarization of, let's say, philosophies and worldviews and ideologies. And even here in Canada now, we have a lot more people feeling very strongly about politics and our prime minister that we have. And so I totally understand an increasing sense or desire to loathe or detest someone. I understand that. But there's something else that's changed here. I have noticed that even if, let's say, a person holds a particular view very strongly, so strongly that they think this is the right view to have, and if you don't have this view, if you're not willing to actually step up and affirm this view, then you're guilty of promoting hate. So, and you might be fine with the view, you're just not promoting it, you just don't want to go that far and affirm it. Let's say a political party, and I'm trying not to burn bridges with people here, so I'm trying not to be specific, but
Too late.
what I've seen, yeah, what I've seen is that the word hate is now applied to people who who simply don't affirm a particular strongly held ideological belief. So it's not that you are against that belief, you just haven't gone far enough to affirm it. And I've seen multiple instances where then that person is labeled as promoting hate. They're on the side of hate simply because they won't affirm. And it's very close to kind of a religious, in the bad sense, okay? Here's some of the religious stuff we've seen going on in the world in the past, where if you're not this particular religion, you are going to be persecuted, perhaps tortured, perhaps even killed. And we've often looked at religions and said, "Oh, religions is very bad." Now that is a bit of an urban myth, and we discussed that a lot last year. And in fact, a colleague of mine, Michael Horner, has a YouTube series on this, and maybe we can put a link in the description below to that series. But there's been a tendency to blame religion for a lot of hate in the past. No, you can't blame religion as to what's going on now in this particular culture here. It's ideologies that are promoting a wide variety of beliefs that may be religious, may not be religious. They may be moral beliefs, they may be political beliefs, they may even be environmental beliefs. And
Well,
if you don't
it's a
affirm
person's
that,
worldview, right?
yeah, it's a
It's
worldview
like,
that they.
what's their belief structure and how important is that for them? And
Yeah, and if it's very important, that's a problem if you don't affirm it.
that's what I'm seeing. Like, okay, why did someone try and take out Trump? Well, they see him as a existential threat, and just like in a lot of the wars between religions or between countries, they see the other group of people as an existential threat. Now, there might be, as we see in the Middle East in some cases,
Yeah.
but you've got this area where it's like, if I don't take these people out, they're going to directly affect me negatively. Therefore, I need to go and do this.
Yeah. And I have to confess that I'm a mere human myself. It's not like I'm immune to, if I see someone who is ruling a country, particularly if it happens to be mine, and they are just making decisions that's causing suffering to millions, literally millions of people, there can be a growing resentment within me. And I can see why some people might take it that far. Now, let me qualify this by saying I am a sincere, I would call it myself, a legit Christian who that's not even an option for a Christian to hate your neighbor. It's not an option, but I certainly understand the temptation. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and like the Bible actually calls us to the opposite of hate. So, um, has has the has the culture gotten to a point where we don't have a baseline of respect for other people's beliefs yet, or already? Like, have we gotten to the point that somebody else's beliefs, even if they don't affect mine, because they're different than mine, there is now an anger or I cannot work with this person.
Yeah, it's it could be due to a number of factors. One is that I see reason being abandoned now in Western culture. The ability to sit down with people and say, well, I just need to understand a little bit better about what you're saying here because it sounds to me like something I would have difficulty accepting. So let's just talk about it. Let's go for coffee and let's work through it. In fact, immediately before this live stream, I posted on a website, somebody argued that the Asbury revival has a natural explanation, and therefore the supernatural explanation is can be rejected. And all I did was question that assumption that if you have two explanations for a phenomenon, one is natural, one is supernatural, that you automatically go with the natural one. Or if you can even come up with an alternate explanation, then you falsify the other one, and that doesn't work. And that's what I would call a rational discussion. So, and then they responded, and then we're going back. But it's a rational discussion. But a lot of what I see now in our culture, people they don't know how to defend what they believe. In fact, even the idea of true beliefs is seen maybe as a racist concept, maybe by people with a certain ideology. And so they don't even want to discuss things rationally. In fact, I had a professor in women's studies tell me that logic is a tool invented by men to subjugate women. And I can't even use that if I was going to discuss with her something. And I was actually stymied there. I thought, well, okay, how am I going to proceed? But there is a way to proceed that I see in our culture, and that is through, you're not allowed to offend me, where offend means make me feel like I might not believe something true or something like this, or just say something contrary to what I believe. You're not allowed to offend me. And if I disagree with you, I'm going to label you as a hate monger or a racist, a bigot. Yeah, those are very common words used now. And what, yeah, it's just kind of, well,
there's a few people here watching right now, and I'm sure there's going to be some people watching later. So feel free to comment and leave a question in the chat. We'll look at it and potentially discuss it. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the bell. We have moved our live stream around a little bit just because I had a dentist appointment yesterday, which is as bad as a flood. But
worse. Well, maybe
worse.
as bad.
Well,
Yeah.
depends on the flood, I guess.
Depends on the drill, how much drilling's happening.
I hate the dentist. I hate it.
No, don't say that.
Wait a second. I hate going to the dentist is what I actually hate.
Yeah, no, it's not where I go for relaxation. Let's put it that way. But yeah, I think like Mama Kay here raises a question. As you lose control, is there a tendency to respond with more intense feelings? And that could be hate. You want to lash out or you want to remove that threat. Again, I totally understand that. And it is something I think we do have to deal with. I mean, we can't just let's say, the criminals take over the world, although, well, I won't expand on that, but we we can't just let evil take over. There has to be some sort of maintenance of control in the end. But there is certainly a tendency to want to lash out at anybody who threatens our own freedom.
And when I think of that, I think of Peter when Jesus was being arrested. Like, he did not like those Roman centurions.
No.
And, like, I don't know if he was aiming for the ear.
Yeah, it's very odd that it says that he sliced it. I would think yeah, bad shot on his part, or maybe a good shot for the slave of the high priest, I think.
Or something, but
fortunately, Jesus was there.
Yeah, so Jesus heals the Roman guard, but that was Peter fear. That was fear of losing this person that he loved, and willing to die or kill somebody at least over what was going to be happening. And which was interesting because I think he should have already recognized what was going on there, since he was told it was going to be happening. But,
yeah, they seem to have problems with that. But for me, with the idea of losing control, if I see threats to my freedom that are rising, particularly from governments, where I can do very little about it, there is a temptation to do something about it, and we can see some of that occurring in those assassination attempts on Trump. But what helps me a lot, and that is, there's a couple of things that help me, because I can be motivated to hate people. I can be motivated to hate people, especially if they're taking control of my life. And the thing that helps me when it comes to governments is knowing that ultimately God is the one who sets up the kingdoms and takes them down, so he's got a plan. Now, I know someone might object to that and say, yeah, but okay, then you're just going to sit there and say, well, I can't do a thing about it, I'm helpless. But no, we can do something about it. I think if I disagree with what the government has done, I don't see anything wrong with having a intelligent conversation about it, maybe laying out some maybe better alternatives. And in a democracy, God has given the people the responsibility to get out there and vote or not vote. And I know that some people strongly believe that, well, I don't know about the voting anymore. Could it be tampered with? Doesn't matter to me, because any tampering that goes on is allowed or not allowed by God. So in the end, what I have to do is I have to do my duty and trust that no matter how bad my leader is, my political government is, no matter how bad that is, and the prophecies in the Bible say it's going to get way worse towards the end, no matter how bad it is, God's in total, complete control of what goes up and what goes down. When it comes to an individual, that's different. I've had individuals who've done wrong to me, and I think one thing that's really helped me is begin to put myself in their shoes. If I had grown up in their shoes, would I have done the same thing? And that could be a very humbling thing to start contemplating, especially the older you get and the more you see the kind of shoes people are growing up in. I don't have such a high view of myself anymore, at least not the natural way I was, not the natural way I would have gone had God not intervened in my life. And the other thing that helps me is that God seems to say that they are created in the image and likeness of God, and despite how bad they are and how badly marred that image is, they have enormous value. And sometimes I'll say, okay, I'm going to pray for that person. I've actually picked out, I won't mention anybody's name here, but I have a poster boy for the person that's hardest to love, as Jesus says we should love our neighbor. And I have, on a regular basis, a recurring basis, prayed for that person as an individual. And I'll tell you, that helps as well. And if I can't pray for the poster boy, I got a problem.
Well, yeah, and when you're praying for a miracle, it recognizes that, one, it's going to require a God thing for something to change. And it puts us in a position where we have to release the control.
Yeah, we want to take control.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
we want to take control, but we also want to give control to others, to give them the responsibility to do what I want them to do.
Yeah.
In
The
effect,
people
I'm
we
also
endorse.
giving the authority, which is a problem. But
Yeah.
we like to be controlled. We're built to be controlled. We're built to worship.
Yeah, except that God doesn't control us in that same way that I often see politicians and governments wanting to. Like, he gives us the option at any point to say no to God, to do the exact opposite of what he desires, because I think in the end, he wants that relationship to be intentional and meaningful. Back to this idea, though, of hate being extended to me because I won't affirm certain things. Like, for example, I think everybody probably has moral boundaries when it comes to sexual activities. I went to Chat GPT and I just said, what do people like to look at on online questionable websites? And it gave me, like, what are the top things? And I could tell that some things are way down the list. And those things that are way down the list, the vast majority of people will say, okay, that is wrong. We'll draw the line there. But the problem is people draw the line at different places on that spectrum. And I have found often that where I have drawn the moral line is not where other people think I should have drawn the moral line. And they would accuse me of, because I can't affirm activities on the other side of the line, that therefore I'm promoting hate against those people. And when in fact I might not hate them in the least, I might dearly love them, if they're friends and loved ones and so forth. So the problem is, how do we deal with accusations of, they'll say, you're supposed to love people, but you're promoting hate. So how do you deal with that?
Well, there's also you're not allowed to judge me. Because you're judging me, you're hating me. And I don't think the bumper sticker of God doesn't hate people, he just hates, don't hate the sinner, just hate the sin. I don't think that really gets deep enough to be something that we can really get into. But I do think there's this idea where if I'm being, and I understand, if somebody's accusing me of doing something wrong, and I might be actually doing something wrong, that's embarrassing. I don't want to be told not to do it.
It's always embarrassing.
And so I have a choice at that point. I can recognize what I'm doing is wrong, or I can lie and saying that's not happening, or I can lash out and try and redirect or transfer the pain or the anger or whatever back onto the other person. And I think that's what we're seeing here.
That's very common. I mean, it's a psychological, almost natural default response is to attack the other person who's done that. And that's totally understandable. Another thing I find that's helpful, though, well, back to this, the judging aspect of things, I think it's helpful to communicate, wait a sec, I think we're probably all in the same boat here. We just crossed the line in different ways and in different places. Like when Jesus says he who looks on a woman to lust after has committed adultery in his heart. Well, I don't really ask for a show of hands when I'm talking to a group of people, but I am pretty sure I've implicated, at least I know guys. I've worked with guys for decades now. I've probably implicated most, if not all, the guys in the room. And I'm one of them. I'm one of the guys in the room, so to speak. And I think when we can...
I'm pretty sure when Jesus said that, he was implicating all the guys on earth.
I don't know. Like, I have met guys that... I don't know. But I would say that really helps, I think, in conversations when I'm accused. That backlash you mentioned, Sheldon, when... I'm not judging anybody when I say, here's where I think the line is. And I will say, according to Jesus, I have violated that line, so I'm in the same boat. I'm not portraying myself as somehow better than anybody else. All I am saying is, here's what I think the line is, and here's the way I really desire to live. And now, on the other hand, God gives us the freedom to to cross that line, not from the consequences, but from just the ability to do it. But it's very difficult to be accused of promoting hate. When I talked with a young couple just a month ago who were in a similar situation, and the sister accused her, in fact, the whole family accused her of promoting hate, when in fact, I could see when we were talking, she dearly loved her sister, and it broke her heart to hear her family say things like that about her, but she just couldn't endorse where her sister was going. And that's not easy to handle. And that is probably the toughest area to handle accusations of hate, when the word hate has been extended and been weaponized to make people, to manipulate people, or to put pressure on people to endorse what you want them to endorse. And that's really what's going on with the extension of the word hate. It's been weaponized. It's become a tool to pressure people to embrace an ideology or a political party or whatever. And I don't know, it's a huge problem. It's kind of gotten out of hand.
Well, and I remember when I was a kid hearing about abuse within the church and how words were weaponized back then in a controlling way by a pastor who used the word of God as a weapon.
Yeah.
And
That,
humans aren't very nice. Humans aren't very good. And
No,
so it's hard to say that I haven't used words as a weapon in the past.
I'll plead guilty there again, Sheldon. I'll plead guilty on that, because if you want to make the other person's position, let's say you don't agree with their position, there's a natural motivation to make it look worse than it actually is by using adjectives to describe that position that you're actually exaggerating. They're not really a hate monger. They're not really a bigot. But if you apply those words to his position, it puts that person, it's a way of denigrating another person's beliefs or position on virtually anything, is to exaggerate negative terms, label the other guy with those negative terms as a pressure technique to make him, either to make him embrace your position, or to marginalize those people and just take away their voice, to marginalize them and shut them up, which is always a dangerous thing if you look at history.
Yeah, and I've seen in different online blogs and stuff like that, as this politicization of everything and weaponization of everything, including language, has happened. It's used to quell people's ability to share their viewpoints, and we know in the future Christians are going to be marginalized, and around the world a lot of people already are marginalized.
And not just, it's not going to stop at just marginalizing the Christians, but
so how do you handle it when there is like the word grenade is thrown at you?
Yeah.
How do you handle that?
I'll tell you what the best way that I have found to handle it, but that doesn't mean that it is the best way. But in the end, I have actually done this, and it seems to work remarkably well. And that is, I just say, hey, why don't we get together for coffee? Let's go somewhere. And I find when people start talking to each other face to face, they're way more polite and civil. You see their body language, the expressions on their face. Now, I mean, there was one atheist who just is absolutely rude, would be a massive understatement, online. But when I've met him on a few different occasions, I did a formal debate with him on one occasion, and he seems to be very polite and civil in real life. But yet, when you get him into the safety of not seeing me face to face, wow, like it is hatred. It is just unbridled hatred. So I find getting together with a person would be one thing. The second thing is to introspection. Am I actually, what is my attitude here? Is there something about my attitude that actually portrays a dislike or a contempt to the other person, even in the way I speak? Like, that's where typing in an argument online, there's no body language, there's no facial expressions, there's no tonal changes, and you lose a ton in the ability to communicate. And I know when I communicate that way, I'm communicating as an engineer or a physicist. It's just like, it's just fact, premise, conclusion. It's very cold. And it comes very dogmatic as well. Cold, dogmatic, this is the way it is, when in fact, that's not actually the way I want it to be. So I even practicing online typing, can I rewrite this some way that seems more personable?
There's a couple of memes that come to mind. I think of the guy sitting behind his computer. I can't come to bed yet. There's somebody wrong on the internet. That to me is one of the funniest things. Just like I need to solve this problem. Somebody's wrong on the internet. It's just not going to solve it.
Another thing that helps me is just to realize, Jesus said you'll be hated. Literally, that's his, and I quote, you will be hated by all nations. That's towards the end of history here, not necessarily right now. No, I definitely do not want to do anything to contribute to that as far as unnecessarily burning bridges, whatever. But at the other hand is we cannot avoid being hated, despite however nice we might be or civil we might be. It's simply going to be an impossible task. And at that point, I just take my lashes. Okay, that person hates me. I don't want to pour fuel in the fire. Or maybe I'll distance myself so I'm not. There was one individual that I unfriended who I could see just my presence causes them just to unleash hate vomit. And I thought, I don't want to contribute to this. I'll just distance myself from that person so that I don't do that. But at the end of the day, I go to God and I say, Father, make sure there's nothing going on in me. And this isn't, I find that's not a quantum click the switch and all of a sudden I'm Mr. Nice Guy. No, I think it's a lifelong progression that God works within me to make me less hate inciting and more a demonstration of the kind of love that God has for people. And that's another question. If we're going to talk about hate, what did Jesus mean by love?
Back to something you said there about how Jesus said they'll hate me or they'll hate you because of me. He didn't say they'll hate you because I'm there, therefore you can do whatever you want. He was saying, like, they'll hate you because of me, but if they hate you because you're a jerk, that's because you're a jerk.
Exactly. And I don't want to have anything to do with jerkiness. I mean, despite the fact that, there's some really nice people that are just nice. Mm-hmm. I'm not one of those. I admire those people. I wish I was like that. But what I am doing is I talk to God. When I was young and naive, I thought I needed to be tuned up, in one or two areas, and then everything else is, it's coming along pretty good. And the older I got, maybe I need to be tuned up in maybe half a dozen or a dozen areas. And now that I'm old, I realize I need tuned up in all areas, everything. I need tuned up constantly, all the time. But at least it's going in the right direction. That's the thing. Am I becoming a more civil, more respectful? Am I becoming better at not and abandoning being a jerk? Let's put it that way. Abandoning, so that if people hate me, they're going to hate me because I represent Jesus Christ, not because I'm obnoxious or whatever.
So, okay, let's reverse it a little bit. Love. So, is hate and love opposites? Like, is it a line where on one side's hate and one side's love, or is it basically there's two different things going on there, and there's no gradients or whatever?
I tend to agree, Sheldon. I think you're right that there's not really a spectrum here. Some people, I mean, we often tend to think of it as a spectrum, but when I think of the way Jesus talked about love and the way we're talking about hate, hate is, it's not an absence of all that adrenaline and that whatever. It's not that. Love is not that. C.S. Lewis has quite a lengthy discussion on this, and he explores what do we mean by love your neighbor. And one of the first things he considers is, does it mean to feel fond of your neighbor? He says, what does it mean to love your neighbor as yourself? And he thought, do I feel fond of myself? And the answer is no, I don't feel fond of myself. In fact, if anything, I'm constantly disappointed in myself. So that's not what he means, is to feel fond of your neighbor. Well, what does it mean? And he goes through all this and eventually converges that, what is it about yourself? Why do you treat yourself better? And I'm not talking about a person who is maybe abusing themselves, maybe doing cutting and that sort of thing. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a person who seems his mental health or her mental health is doing well. What do they do? How do they treat themselves? And basically what they do is they look out. They don't do things that they know are going to be harmful, going to destroy themselves, that sort of thing. They want the best for themselves, not in a greedy sense, but if they just have an option between, say, eating, a bag of spiders or eating a nice barbecued steak, they'll take the steak because the spiders are a little questionable, that bag of spiders. Same with love. So he
little questionable. That's a little questionable compared to the steak.
Oh man, I know. I watched this TV show about, what was that, not Man Against the Wild. It was Bear Grylls, I think it was, popped one of those camel spiders in his mouth, and then he bit into it. And I won't describe what I saw on the TV because it'll completely derail this conversation. But C.S. Lewis concluded that what it means is that I'm looking out for my neighbors, for anybody's best interest. What's best for that person? That doesn't mean giving them what they're asking for, because often that's going to be harmful, actually. So what is best for that person it requires wisdom, insight, understanding, getting to know other people. So when I think about, I've almost named him a couple of times. So when I think about the poster boy here, the guy that's least that I find the most difficult to love as my neighbor, I think, what would be best for this person as an individual? If he were having, oops, I slipped on the gender there, but if he were having coffee with me, and I had to ask myself, what is best for this person? And just set all the politics aside, that's the first thing I would do. And that's what Jesus means by loving your neighbor in the way that you love yourself. You're concerned for them. You grieve at the particular stage. Yeah.
So I found the quote. So you're told to love your neighbor as yourself. How do you love yourself? When I look into my own mind, I find that I do not love myself by thinking myself a dear old chap or having affectionate feelings. I do not think that I love myself because I am particularly good, but just because I am myself and quite apart from my character, I might detest something which I have done. Nevertheless, I do not cease to love myself. In other words, that definite distinction that Christians make between hating sin and loving the sinner is one that you've been making in your own case since you were born. You dislike what you've done, but you don't cease to love yourself. You may even think that you ought to be hanged. Let's go right to that. You may even think that you ought to go to the police and own up and be hanged. Love is not affectionate feeling, but a steady wish for the loved person's ultimate good, as far as it can be obtained.
Excellent, Sheldon. I'm glad you found that. That is excellent. It also kind of answers the question of what happens, let's say, if I have a moral line here and somebody is thinking I'm promoting hate because I can't affirm where their moral line is. Well, as he states right here in this quote, I might even there's lots of things I've done that were wrong, and I am so disappointed in myself. And over the years, where I shouldn't have said, attitudes, whatever, we're all in that same boat. And he addresses that well. I love myself. I take care of myself because I'm myself, not because I think I'm a dear old chap or I'm on the right side of everything. No.
He has something for words.
Yeah. Oh, I wish I had his command of language.
All right. Well, let's get back to you. Yeah, I've always looked at that. What does it mean to love your neighbor? And it's, well, love your neighbor as yourself. What does that look like? And if you love yourself as a created being, that God has created you and has died for you, if I can't recognize who I am in God's eyes, I'm not going to be able to love myself. But if I can recognize who I am in God's eyes, I need to be able to love myself.
Mm-hmm.
Even
Because
though,
I'm valued by
there's times
God.
I should be hanged.
Yeah.
And if I look at myself the way God looks at me as his creation that he died for, I should be able to look at my neighbor, as bad as that neighbor might be in my eyes, and be able to love him like God does.
I should be. Well, that's an extremely important point, Sheldon, that I would have to say my own ability to respect and want what's best for other people or what's good for them, that is a result of God valuing me as an individual. I mean, there's been so many times I'm very hard on myself. I beat myself up. I call myself an idiot. And I've been actually convicted. I am not sure I should be doing that. I mean, if God values me, I really have no right to demean and devalue myself. And my value is not dependent on what I think of myself, because it'd be pretty low. My value is on what God thinks of me, and then that helps me treat other people the way I ought to treat them.
And as you're doing that, I think it's the bright light in a dark room. If your eyes see that bright light as a negative thing, that's why people hate it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jesus said something like that. They will hate the light.
Yeah, and so they're not hating you because you're a jerk. They're hating you because it's the light that shines through and opens up. Oh wow, I'm not good.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we can get into judging and stuff in another episode. I think we're running out of time here. But
Yeah, I just don't enjoy judging. I mean, because I know that I'm going to get judged too. That's the problem.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else you want to say on this topic?
Maybe just one more thing, Sheldon, and it's just a result of some news headlines I read this morning. And the question is it when you promote hatred against another person or even a political party, when you promote that hatred, is the end result negative and destructive, or is it positive and constructive? And I consistently see, when I saw what a politician did this morning, and we're talking about my own country here, we're not talking about U.S. politics, even though largely I agree with a lot of his policies, I just cringed because I realized he's promoting hatred against this leader of this party here, and that is not going to go in the right direction. And this is one thing I just earnestly wish politicians would do, although, as I said, I'm not pure as the driven snow here in saying negative things about people. But I don't think, I think maybe in the short term it makes a person feel good to put down somebody else or put down another political party or whatever. But I think I'm mostly concerned about individuals here. Political parties are not people. But it's not, it never ends well. It never ends well. And in the short term, in the long term, it does not end well. I think it's much better to just try as best we can to abstain from putting down other people, and say, and maybe if you even can't say anything good, I think my dad always said, if you can't say anything good about that person, don't say anything at all. And that actually might be some good advice. Or put forward a positive solution rather than put that person down over there. Just put forward a positive solution. In the end, I think it'll always come out better.
The other thing I would add is look at motivations. There, even in the midst of somebody who I might believe is completely wrong in how they would a strategy of solving the problem, they're seeing a problem that I often see as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep, good point.
And if you can go back to, okay, let's talk about the problem, because I think there's an agreement there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's going to be things that you're just never going to agree on, and at that point, it's like, okay, we're gonna disagree, whether we agree to disagree or not. We're disagreeing, but there's no point in fighting over it, because you're not going to change your mind. I'm not going to change my mind. But I think it's important to recognize, okay, where is this person coming from, and why are they? Mama K, I'm not sure what we were talking about when you posted this, but we'll look into that in a sec here.
John 3.
John 3, 19 to 21. But yeah, I think whenever I've had something where I'm really trying to figure out where this person's coming from, I try and look at what problem are they trying to solve.
It's true. Often there's common ground there. Like you just have two different ideas of how you're going to solve that problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see Mama Kay's reference here. She's talking about people loving darkness rather than the light. And I think that gets back to that earlier statement that I made, that Jesus said, in the end, at the end of history, you'll be hated by all nations, despite, no matter how nice you are, the fact that you'll be hated by all because of my name. And that'll be the clincher there. And there is a case where there's a situation, people love darkness rather than light. But in the meantime, your idea there is, do we have a common ground there? And I find often disagreement at this level, there might be agreement at a deeper, more fundamental level.
Totally. All right. Well, again, those of you who are watching now and later, if you have any questions or anything that you want us to talk about in the future, post those in the comments or go to kirkdurston.com and send in a message there. Kirk does read them all and usually responds. And it doesn't matter what the question is. Let's try and stump Kirk. I think we should have a questions Kirk can't answer segment sometime.
There's lots of them.
We'll try and limit it to a 4-hour block. But I think it's always fun to send in those questions. One thing I would love to have, I don't know if next week you can do this or not, but what is the one thing that when you're in front of God in heaven and you could ask anything, what would that be?
Well, we can think about that.
Yeah, so I'll give you some time to think about it. But I've been thinking about that myself. Like, what is the mystery that I will never understand here? Maybe I'll understand it in heaven. What are the mysteries of God that stump me the most, that I really want the answer for?
That's a good, and I bet the people will come up with some pretty good ones there, which we can discuss. Sure. Not that we're giving God's answer here.
Oh, no.
It's just that.
No. That's why it's a mystery. Yeah. All right. Well, all right. We'll see you next week. I'll see you before that, but those of you that are watching, we'll see you next week.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.